Hey everybody, Sally here with the Connection Project for another episode, and I'm here and so excited today to be with my friend. I call her my friend, another coach, Krista. And let me just tell you a little bit about Krista because she is pretty impressive, and she was definitely on my short list of when I wanted to do my first few interviews for this podcast about connection because she is really the epitome of connection. When I met her, it's just an energetic connection. She is connected, and she just shows me in so many ways what it is to be connected. And she may not even know that I'm saying that about her. She's hearing it now for the first time, but that's truly how I felt. And she actually put just a post out, and maybe a reel, I think it was. And it just zinged me, like when we get that zing, that download, and I was like, yes, I have to reach out and ask her to be one of my first guests. So here we are. I'm so excited. So let me tell you a little bit about Krista. She's a former oncology RN turned life coach, supporting others in resurrecting their voice and stepping into their power so that they can fall madly in love with their life. How amazing does that sound? She's a mom, a wife, a lover of all things nature, and proponent of natural healing. She has a beautiful son and her husband, and she just does all things that create connection for her. She's just one of those people, and I'm going to let her speak, but she's just one of those people, for me anyway, that felt like if it's not a hell yes, if it doesn't feel good in my body, I'm not doing it. She was not one like me sometimes who may follow the crowd or may feel compelled to do it or may create my little chameleon thing that I do to fit in. And so I'm definitely a people pleaser in that way. And I've been working on that, being my authentic self. But yeah, she's always, since I met her, that's the energy I connected with Krista, and it's been amazing, and it makes you just want to be a part of her sphere. So welcome, Krista. Hopefully I didn't embarrass you with any of that, but that's honestly how I feel. So I'm so
Not,
excited to have you.
not at all. Thank you for that warm, incredible welcome. I feel like all buzzy and warm around me with that.
Receive it, receive it.
I so appreciate it. And I want to thank you. I feel honored to be on this podcast. I know all the incredible work that you're doing in your community, and I too feel inspired by you. So I'm just so excited and overjoyed to be sharing space with you today.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I love it. I can feel it. I feel the
Mhm,
love today.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
So this is a new endeavor for me, right? Oh God, I'm afraid of
mhm,
visibility, but here I am launching a podcast, and I'm so excited about this topic. So the podcast, obviously, is called the Connection Project. And I
mhm,
really
mhm,
just, all things connection, I just feel like it's such an open topic and
mhm,
means different things for different people. It means one thing to me, but I wanted to share with the audience, like, when I asked you to do this, because I know how like my connection to you feels and what is in my mind and body when I even if originally met you on Zoom. Krista and I met in we're both nurse coaches. We met in a mastermind, a long-term group we were in. That group was very connected. Um,
mhm,
we did a
mhm.
retreat together and we were all very connected. And so that's our little backstory. And we are not in any groups together now, but I still feel that energy every time I talk to Krista. So what to you, when we talk about this connection, like what does that even mean to you? Do you mind sharing that with us?
Ooh, I can, and I'll try to make it like as brief and digestible as possible. And I think it's for me, it's the in out. So it starts with the inside, that connection, that inner connection, but then also aligning with that outer world or our external world. So for me, it's that alignment and harmony, kind of like I always think of like water. So that flow between the two, but the source, it always comes from the inside and then flows outward.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I believe that too. And so can you just take us maybe a little bit on your own journey
Absolutely.
around Like, have you always felt that connection? Because for me,
No,
let me
no.
raise my hand. I was so
Mhm,
disconnected from myself, my body, my emotions. I could go on, right? And so that's
mhm.
part of what we're going to do here is we're going to talk to different people about like what is their journey? Where are they now with connection? And it's not always roses and unicorns and butterflies, right? So just
Mhm.
maybe sharing a little bit, whatever you're comfortable with sharing with us on your journey on connection or disconnection around yourself, and how did you
Yeah.
come to that?
Ooh, so I mean, connection for me, I will say, is a much more recent thing. I have to say that I spent most of my life, even as a child, very disconnected. Um, as a kid, like young child, I was really, I guess you would call shy, and just lots of anxiety, which I didn't know until I was an adult, like stomach aches, all of these things, just so disconnected from my body, from myself. Um, and then that moved through into like my adolescence and early adulthood. And in my early to mid 20s, I kind of just I really hit the ground hard. It was a really, really challenging time in my life. And it was this, I guess you would call it an awakening. And I realized how much I didn't like myself and how disconnected I was from myself. And I thought that I was like, oh, Miss Confident and I'm social and all of this, but this it was this really, it wasn't a real connection, authentic connection, what I consider now. Like that connection I had then was all external. It was like how people see me, um, how I can make other people feel, what I can do for them, how much fun. And I mean, I had a large group of friends. I spent a lot of time with friends. I was always doing something, even during the week, like weeknights. And I never spent any time alone. I thought I was just like, oh, I'm a social person. I'm this social butterfly, which is really actually not true. It was that I didn't want to be alone with myself, because if I was alone, all of those kind of truths, those ugly truths, those things that I didn't want to look at, they were going to come up. And I had the privilege of being able to sit with that and have them come up and just realize, like, wow, I don't like myself. And the reason why was because I was disconnected. So my spirit, my soul was not matching my outward, my human behavior, how I was living my life. They weren't in coherence, they weren't in harmony, in alignment. And once I was kind of able to see that, I think that's where the journey began for me, of starting with myself first, forging that relationship with self and connection. And I haven't arrived there. I think it's going to be like this lifelong process, and it changes. And at that time, like, when I was getting myself well and healthy and connecting to myself and learning to love myself, it was a process, and I got to like a point where I felt really good, and I felt like happiness and joy with myself and contentness with life for the first time really ever. But then fast forward to like now, in the past few years, that's even changed and grown. So like I think about what you talked about, that reel that you reached out to me about, because I can remember that. And that grew out of, I was driving. I think I was going to like a workshop or something that I was attending. And I was driving through this rural area, and I could just see the fields, the grass, the trees, the skies. And I had the radio on, and the song, it was probably, some love type song. And normally when I would hear a song like that, I would think of my husband or something else, like some relationship. And that's not what happened. Very organically, I thought of the song as being sung to myself. And I was like,
Uh,
what? Like,
I love it.
how beautiful is that? And for me, it was so beautiful because that was a testament to how far that I've come and where I continue to grow and to go to. Like, holy shit. Like, yeah, not about another person. Yes, I love my husband, but not making it about somebody else, that it was about me. And I didn't have to create that thought. It
Mhm.
just came to me. It came to me. And it's amazing because I know my story. I know where I've come from. And so to go to a place where I'm so in love with myself, and I don't mean like in love, like, "Oh, I'm so perfect," and things like that.
Right,
I mean, even
right.
loving the parts that someone might see as ugly, or even myself that, like, maybe I still
Yes,
don't really like, wish I didn't do that, but I also love it because it's a part of my makeup, it's a part of my journey, and then it gives me this opportunity to practice and be different. And so that connection has allowed me to have even deeper relationships with other people. Like, I think about friends or family that we've had maybe similar journeys. I mean, different, but similar. And that same kind of journey of self love and growth. Um, we've been able to share in that, and now we connect on a deeper level. Or people that I meet now, like you, for example, or other coaches in our group, like I can have this really deep connection even if we don't talk every day, even if we don't talk in for months, weeks.
I know.
That because I'm so connected to myself, and another individual so connected to themselves, we just meet on this like soul or spiritual level, whatever you want to call it, the divine in us, God,
I know.
however you call it. um, we're able to see each other like that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So many things that you said resonate, and it's true, right? Because we spent time on Zoom together, but it was in a group. That group was pretty connected right from
Mhm,
the start, pretty much, I think. And then
mhm,
after our retreat, there were things there were things that just connected us, even though many of us were very, very different in our personal lives, in our human
mhm,
experiences, things like
mhm,
that. But something on a soul level for some of us really, I think, connected. So, and I have friends like that, right? That my circle of friends is can be small. There's acquaintances, but there are people. I was actually talking to a girlfriend last night, and I just said one thing when she picked up the phone, and she went into this utter laughter that is like, and I said to her, "This is why we are always going to be connected, energetically connected, because she just gets me on this level.
mhm,
I barely have to say anything, and we just both go into this cackle, which may annoy other people, but for us, it just brings this joy that I don't
mhm,
always experience, and haven't always experienced myself. So, for the listeners, let's talk a little bit, and whatever you're comfortable sharing, not sharing, but because to the listener, this may sound like, oh, well, rainbows and butterflies again, right?
mhm,
Unicorns, right? But
mhm,
how do we
mhm,
get, because I know my story of how my disconnection showed up for me, and it
mhm.
is something when I met you in, wherever we were, where were we? Tennessee. When I
Yeah.
met you in person, um, and online, again, I don't wanna, like, beat this dead horse, but your connection for me, what stood out was your ability to be like, "This is kinda who I am." And
Mm.
so if I'm gonna be in the room
Mhm,
and pump,
mhm,
I'm
mhm,
gonna be
mhm,
if I'm gonna not worry about my coaching practice right now and connect more to my
mhm,
son, this is my
mhm,
path. And I
mhm,
really, really, for me, connected with that because I
mhm,
struggled with some of those things. And I felt like, wow, she just knows who she is. And we see that sometimes from people, especially with social media, right? Like, oh, they're killing it or whatever. But where in your journey, because that was what I saw or felt from you, I honestly really felt that energetically from you. But where in your journey, because it doesn't go from here to here, like here to here, people can't see what I'm doing with my hands, but here to here, like A to Z doesn't happen like that. There's bumps, healing,
mhm,
not linear. Like, I don't know if someone out
mhm.
there tells you, anyone that's listening, that your fucking healing journey is going to be easy, they are wrong.
Yes,
It
absolutely,
is
they're lying to you.
difficult. They are lying to you. It is not a 6-month thing. It's not a 3-month
No,
thing. I've been
no,
doing it for
no.
3 years, and I have ups
Mhm,
and downs, and you peel new
mhm,
layers back. So just share a little bit with our audience, what you're comfortable with sharing about, like, when that moment happened that you were
mhm.
like, "Something has to give."
Okay. Well,
Where you know
I
what
mean,
I
I
mean,
have.
right? Something has
Yeah,
to
yeah,
give.
yeah.
I'm feeling this disconnection, and something has to change in my world regardless, and how that kind of felt and looked for you, because I do want the audience to understand,
Mhm,
to get sometimes to this self connection or connection with others, or connection to spirit. I mean, the connection is so
Mhm,
many things, but how I do think it starts with ourselves.
mhm,
And how that can be a little difficult sometimes,
mhm,
but you have to go through it to get to the other side. And so if
mhm,
you're comfortable sharing a little bit of that with
mhm,
us.
mhm, mhm. So going back, and I'll get into more detail on that challenging time of my life. I want to say I was 23 or maybe 24, and I was getting out of a relationship, my first like really serious relationship. And I was with someone who was a narcissist and also addicted to opiates that I didn't know, and came to realize through the relationship. And as I left that relationship, oh, it was soul crushing. If anyone has ever been with a narcissist, I mean, that is what they do. They drain the energy from you. So then having that and then the layer of the addiction, it was a lot because I had felt like through our relationship, I just had the life sucked out of me.
Yeah.
Um, and then it was very easy, I think, getting out of that to say, "Oh, it's you, to blame you, this other person, like that, you are the bad person. You're the bad guy and I'm the victim." And I think that's where it was that beginning for me, that aha, the beginning of my work, because I wasn't a victim and I had been so disconnected to myself. And that's why I ended up with this person. It was no mistake or coincidence. It was because I didn't have that deep connection with myself.
I
Um,
love that. I just want to stop you there for 1 second because I don't want to
yeah.
forget to make this point because that's a beautiful
Hmm.
point that I think is so important is
Hmm.
that we sometimes get into these relationships with narcissists, with
Hmm.
people that are not nice to us, people that make
Hmm.
us feel bad about ourselves. And then we tend to blame them. Oh,
Hmm.
hello. That was me. Like my job, even leaving my job, I blame that it's a toxic environment. It have been, but it was really stuff I needed to work out internally, whether I chose to stay or not, and relationships and
Hmm.
parent things. So that's a huge point. I just want to make sure the audience clues into, right? Because what you're saying is, I was not the victim and I can play the victim. I can wallow in the shame. And I'm not saying nobody is ever, I don't want any of the victims out there to think that they're not like things happen to us. Things definitely
Hmm.
happen to us. So I'm not
Hmm.
saying that. But
Absolutely.
taking control, radical
Mhm.
responsibility for our own healing is key. So I didn't want to go on
Yeah.
from there, but
No,
I didn't want the
thank
audience
you.
to miss that point, and I didn't want it to get if there's other points. I wanted to make sure to make that because the moment that you chose
Mhm.
to take responsibility for
Mhm.
your part, not
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
not that you asked for that. I don't want anyone to
Mhm.
think I'm saying that.
Mhm.
But for all of us that have been in a relationship, even in a family, there's so many different situations, right? The minute I chose to say, okay,
Mhm.
it can't
Mhm.
possibly be like, yes, these people are coming, but what am I allowing? What am I
Ab
choosing?
Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
just really wanted to kind of hone in on that point because I think it is huge. And sometimes I do hear this, and sometimes I know I even like worry about saying it because I don't want people to take it the wrong way, that I don't think that people are taken advantage of or things happen. But the only way to get out of that, in my opinion, is to get through it with
Mhm.
your own choice. And obviously, it's
Mhm.
harder for some than others. So I don't know if
Mhm.
I'll not be a fan of people with that, but I do think it's a huge turning point. It was for me anyway. I
Mhm.
just wanted
No,
to bring that point
I
out for you.
agree. We have to be responsible for ourselves. Like my life is my responsibility. And I think that's where the connection begins, because if we're looking outside of ourselves, for people to make us feel whole or for people to make us feel happy, then we're going to live on a roller coaster,
Yes.
um, because it's not their responsibility. And also, like, would you want to turn over the keys to your life to somebody else and make them responsible? I mean, what I know now, no, of course, I would never want to do that, because what I get to experience, whether it's sadness, joy, anything, it's from me, from my power. And I think that's beautiful. I mean, it's the spectrum, yeah, because it's not rainbows and unicorns. Like we were chatting a little bit before we got on this call, and I said last night I had a tough conversation with my husband, and it wasn't what he said, but what it sparked in me. And it was like the floodgates came out. Like later, I had gone up to my room and I was going to bed and I just started crying. And it was like, oh, I didn't even know where it came from, but it needed to come out. And I can remember as a kid and as a young adult, like I would hide away in my room because I was disconnected, even from myself, didn't want people to see me cry, emoting, any of that. But this was so different because I wasn't hiding. I was just being, and I was letting it flow and just like wash over me. And I just cried and um ended up getting up, and I did some like light reading, and I do homeopathy. So I did take something to kind of just help balance me. And I felt really good. Like it felt like this cleanse, and it needed to come up and come out. And that's a gift. That's a gift. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? Because the gift was that I was able to connect to
Right.
my emotions and my feelings and let them move through me and then reflect on it. And I'm still kind of sitting um, with it. And that's, to me, that's connection. My son, he was sitting on my lap earlier today, and he looked up on me and he goes, how you doing? And I said, I'm good. And then I realized I was lying. Um, and so I looked at him and I said, you know what? That's not true. Mommy's a little sad today. I'm a little sad. And he kind of, his eyebrows kind of burrowed and kind of did like a little sad face. And I said, but that's okay. That's my job to take care of my sadness. And it's okay. And I'm working through it. And I'm going to work on that today. And then his face kind of softened. And I felt a lot better because I want to show him too, like that's how we connect to ourselves, by allowing ourselves to feel it all, the whole spectrum,
Yeah.
not just the happiness,
Yeah.
not just the joy. So to me, that's being connected is the full spectrum of what's available
I
to
love
us,
that.
not just the one thing. Like I always think about a rainbow. A rainbow has this variation of colors, and we're all like, "Oh wow, it's so beautiful." Well, would we think it was so beautiful if there was one color? Probably not, but because we have that variation, that's what makes it, and the contrast is what makes it so gorgeous. And to me, that's the same with the human experience. The contrast of our feelings, our emotions, our life situations, whatever happens, that contrast is just, it's everything. I don't know. To me, that's being
Yes.
connected. That's being
I love
connected.
that. I love all of that, right? And I love when you connected, honestly, with your son in that moment, because although we think that those moments are like, I don't know, insignificant, right? But these
Mm, mhm,
moments that we
mhm,
sometimes think are insignificant are so significant. As I think back to my own childhood, right? Like what bubbles up for my clients or for myself, I never know what's going to bubble up in a healing session because it could be what was like, what are you thinking about that for? But subconsciously, something is coming up. And for you to allow him to know at his young little tender age, because he's
mhm,
amazing, that it's okay that you feel sad and it isn't his responsibility to make you feel better because
mhm,
they're so smart and they're so intuitive and
mhm,
they already start to pick up on that. So instead of living a life of like where I was held to the standard of making people in my house feel better, or
mhm,
that's how I perceived it. And I probably shared that along with my kids when they were young because
mhm,
I was a young mom. And so
mhm,
you have certain ways that you are sometimes, and then you start to awaken or whatever we want to call it, and decide to work and connect to yourself. So it can be different. And I think just really that is so magical to connect with him and let him know, like, no, I'm not okay right now. I'm a little sad, but it's okay because mommy's going to take care of that herself. And we're still going to have a good day. Because I don't think they're too young to know that. You're I think so many times and in history, societally, we hit everything, right? We hit our emotions. You're talking about crying, like
mhm,
something pinged in you when your husband said something and your partner says something to you. And so it evokes this emotion, which is sometimes a story. The emotion is like some story like I have that pings me, but it's really deep, right? The emotion that's pinged is something old and
mhm,
being able to like settle into that and feel it and cry, right? I say this all the
mhm,
time, right? if a river has a bunch of rocks and and it's blocked off, there's a beaver dam, right? There's stagnation that happens. It's the same in our body. Like we need to release that. We're made up of lymphatic and cerebrospinal fluid and
Mhm.
water and all these fluids. So we need to release. But a lot of us were raised, and a lot of listeners out there, I'm sure this resonates with you, right? You were raised to be like, don't cry. I was raised in
Mhm.
a house like that. Don't cry. What's wrong
Mhm.
with you? Here she goes. She's crying again.
Mhm.
So it doesn't make you feel any less emotional. It just makes you suppress it. And then eventually it catches up with you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely. And
eventually your
that's
body will stop you in your tracks. Like for me, at about
Mhm.
55, hate to say, like, bring my age up, but at about 3 or so years ago, my body was like, yeah, man, we're not doing this anymore. Like we've tried to tell you this isn't working for you. And so we're going to halt you with panic attacks and physical symptoms and depression and things that you're not really going to be able to bypass anymore, because you've been
Mhm.
bypassing. So
Mhm.
suppressing, for all you
Mhm.
listeners out there, suppressing isn't the answer. Um, you have to feel it to heal it. You got to go through it. So didn't
Mhm.
mean to interrupt you, but yeah, some really amazing points, and I don't want people to miss that.
No, and
You do
I
such
love that.
amazing work with your son. So that like is I'm so like I love it. I love when I watch that interaction and how you are so true to how you feel about your parenting,
Mhm.
and your relationship. And it is how you live. It seems to me like how you live your life now, very authentic, to who you are.
And I try, and it's not easy. What you said before, like, yeah, that's how you've known me as you've met me. And yes, how do we get there, right? That A to Z point. It's been a process. It continues to be a process. And I think what drives my motivation, what drives me to be myself is the pain of what it was like when I wasn't myself. Because again, I lived most of my life disconnected, codependent, people pleasing, lots of external validation. And when I look at those times and those periods of my life, I had a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and it came because I was not making choices for me. It was for other people and things like that. Even just like past relationships. Before I met my husband, I got out of a relationship that was a great person, a good relationship per se, but not my person. And I got a lot of pushback from family and from friends because he was so wonderful. And so, like, these were the beginning experiences of the pain of being myself. But, like, it's my life. And if I don't live it and I live it for other people, I will experience pain and suffering and physical illness. I had lots of physical things that would come up because, like you said, we're
Mhm.
going against the body will end up saying, no, like, no
Right.
more. You're not doing it. You're not standing up for yourself. So I'm going to stand up for us. And so I was getting that. And I was just, yeah, like depression for me. So, like, okay, I notice now I'm crawling into bed. Like, this shouldn't be happening. And this relationship, like, we're not in harmony, we're not in alignment. And so those were the beginnings. And then I realized the few times in my life that I was truly authentic to myself, even if it didn't work out, I was okay with it. I felt good because it was my choice. And so that is kind of the mantra that I hold for myself, whether it's with my relationship with my husband or the way I parent. I mean, there's times me and my son, we go to stuff and I'm sure parents see me and they're like, "Is she kidding? Like, what is she doing? That's how she's gonna choose. Like, that's not working." Or he's kind of having a fit. But it's just like I have to be true to myself and my son and just like block it out. Is it still like uncomfortable? Yeah. Do I come home sometimes and say to my husband, "Oh man, I felt like, everybody at the playground, like they wanted to get away from us." But like I know that at the end of the day, my son and myself were more important than the opinions of others. And so it's just like,
Yeah.
again, it's just like these glasses that I have to wear and this frame that I have to operate from of being myself. I had the thought recently, and not to like, bring religion into this, but thought of like, what is bearing the cross? And like, it just popped into my head that like maybe bearing your cross is being your authentic self. being yourself, like yourself, because that can be painful. That can be difficult. We want to drop it, right? We want to drop our authentic self, drop our cross, put on this chameleon suit. But I think that that's what it means, like to be ourself, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's painful, even if you want to put that cross down, just just keep doing it because that's what we're here for.
I love it. I love it. It's true, right? It may be painful in the beginning, but it
Mhm.
eventually the pain
Mhm.
subsides.
Yeah. Oh my
Or the
gosh. Yeah.
pain of the uncomfortableness of trying to fit in, trying to people please, trying to be the
Mm.
chameleon, trying to fit in, like, oh, everybody's doing
Mhm.
this, so I should just do it. And that
Mhm.
doesn't stop in high school, unfortunately. Like
Mhm.
that resonates. I'm sure
Yeah.
today it resonates with a lot of people out there. Like we just do it because society says, even as women, right? I don't want to pick on you poor men out there, but even as women, right? We have a societal thought about what we're supposed to do. Like we're supposed to do certain things. And if we are too loud, then we're kind of the B word. And if we're too
Mhm.
bossy, then we're difficult. And so finding that space where you really feel good because it doesn't sometimes feel good in the beginning. Like you said, it's hard to drop that, to let that bag, that cross, whatever it is that we're carrying go and move into authentically who we are, who our soul's purpose, who we are connected to be without all of that baggage of what society, family, whoever has kind of indoctrinated into us, and starting to step into our power, whoever we are and however we want to
Mhm.
live our life. And eventually, because it is true, when those things happen, sometimes people do fall away. I have found in the healing journey, either people are going to come along,
Mhm.
maybe not at your rate, and that's okay,
Mhm.
as long as you're
Mhm.
supportive.
Mhm.
And some people are going to drop off because they don't understand it. It makes them uncomfortable. And that's okay too. It's not my business. And that was
Mhm.
a hard pill for me to swallow, right? It's not my
Mhm.
business. I still love them, but it's not my business if they're not like on board. But I have to
Mhm.
start to be true to myself. And the more you become true, then, we talk about it, intuition, how we feel aligned, what feels good. You always seem to be that person when I met you, because I didn't know you before, that did, like I said in the beginning, was a person that was like, okay, this is a yes for me. Um, Everybody else in the group could be like, I'm doing this. And you could be like, well, but I'm doing this. And this feels good for me. So this is what I'm going to do with my son. That's a lot of power and that's a lot of self-assurance. And I know that doesn't come easy, but once you start doing it from, it sounds from you, and I know for myself, those things feel easier eventually. So know that you can get through that. But in the beginning, it's rough
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to speak to that a bit. I tell clients all the time, it's like building a muscle, right? Like you want to get actual muscles, like you can't sit on the couch. You got to be in the gym. And the more you go, so like the more you practice this, like this being connected to yourself and things like that, and kind of going inward to go outward, it gets easier. And it's the time period is shorter. So like what you said before, when we're kind of, I guess, masking or being chameleon and living for other people and things like that, that pain, I think of that like chronic because it's like a long term. It doesn't really
Yes.
like falter and go away. It's like a chronic, but like the pain of being authentic to yourself and that like discomfort, that's more like acute. So it'll come, but like you move through it faster than if you're not being authentic to yourself, which just like lingers that discomfort
Right.
of
And
following the crowd.
we talked about this just reminds me of something we talked about before we hit the record button today, as we were catching up. Cause if you're seeing me or if you're not seeing me, it depends on how the podcast shows. I've been wearing a hat lately, which is new for me. And normally I would be like, no way. But I'm trying to go gray. Honestly, I'm trying to let my hair get back to its natural color. Now, I don't know if it's gonna work or not, but the pain of the start of it has been hard, and then you just want to give up. So this is a good, I think, analogy, and we kind of talked about this before. So the beginning of that makes sense, right? In the beginning I was like, oh yeah, I'm all in. And then as it starts to grow and they're starting to try to like blend my hair, I still have this where my grandkids will say, my 8-year-old, soon to be 8-year-old granddaughter will be like, grandma, your hair is white here. Like, thanks, Ellie. So but not having that ping me too much and be like, okay, it's hard right now, but, and I don't usually wear a hat, but like, let me just see if I can like move through this without too much
Mhm.
worry about what anyone else is thinking. And the pain of it won't be chronic because what's going to happen? Nobody's going to die if I dye my hair, don't dye my hair, right? I'm giving it a whirl to see if I can get back to my natural self as I start to really embrace my own authenticity and where I am in my stage in my life. Um, Gray hair doesn't have to mean you're old. It's just I've been gray since I've been like 20. So I don't feel like dyeing my hair anymore, honestly, people. So I mean, that's where I'm at. I may end up doing it, but right now, um, it's the hat thing when I'm doing things like this, but that's fine. It may be different 3 weeks from now, and just embracing that authenticity around where we are in our life, because there are always ups and downs. So, that just made me think of that because we talked about that before we started, and it's true, right? And some people may not like it. My hairdresser was like, "Oh, you're gonna look so old." I'm like, "Thank you."
Mhm. Mm.
Right? So, like,
See,
I still push
ugh.
through that uncomfortable, like, oh,
Mhm,
because she doesn't
mhm,
want me to go gray, right? That's about
mhm,
her. That has nothing to do with me. I may not look good. I don't know, but it had that I am self-aware enough to know that that comment had nothing to do with me. She wants to
mhm,
keep dyeing my hair.
mhm, mhm. Ugh,
She's
Sally, thank you
uncomfortable
for
with me
sharing this.
going gray. She's uncomfortable with me going gray.
Yes, exactly, exactly, and that is a thing, and I think I mean, the hair, the body, especially for women, again, not to single out the men here, but the external focus,
Yes.
um, is just it's changing, right? And it's shifting. And I think there's more embracing of the bodies and the hair and the aging and pro aging and all of this stuff. But I mean, it's tough and it's a long time coming.
Yes.
Um, and I mean, I know like so many women, I mean, friends my age who like complaining about the one strand of gray hair. And I mean, that's one thing I'm like, yeah, bring it up. Like, I can't wait. I want to be like this, like silver fox when my time comes. But thank you for sharing that. So that what you said about your granddaughter saying like, grandma, your hair's white. So, like, when we think about that and just kind of break that down, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Just like
Right.
that actual thought, there's nothing, it's a color, right? It's a
Mhm.
color. But the external conditioning and the messages like, well, that's not pretty, that's not okay. And so when we have that that connection with ourselves and it's not perfect. It ebbs and flows. Like you said, like it feels uncomfortable, but like I'm still gonna practice it. It gets easier to show ourselves and to be seen. And I know for myself, like I had lots of kind of body image issues, like probably maybe even like a body dysformic, like, issues and things like that, like in my earlier years and 20s. And when I look back now, I mean, I had an incredible body. I looked great. And my body is much different now. And it's still really great. And that's huge because I don't look the same as I did. But because I have this deep connection with myself, my exterior, like to me, is just it's this extension of me. I mean, it's this package, this wonderful package that I get to use and my vehicle. Um, but that gratefulness for my body and um being able to just accept it comes from a connection with myself. Because again, when I was very disconnected to myself in earlier years, oh, yeah, I mean, so many body
Yeah.
issues. I mean, I go run for miles, my legs look like this, like
I
just
know.
really like it's
We could have a whole
awful.
episode on that.
Oh my gosh, absolutely, absolutely. And I
Mm.
mean, so that's just I wish like for all women, the more we can connect to
Yeah.
our souls and our spirits, then that external, again, those external connections, not just with other people, with our body too, that can just, I think, improve so much.
It is. Yeah, 100%. And something I want to point out to listeners today is that, when we talk about connection to ourself, because there is a lot of stuff in social media and different things about like we can do it all on our own and we have to do it on our own. But I also want to just point out, and this
Mm,
we kind of discussed a little bit in another podcast, is the importance though of community and other people, right? Because we radically have responsibility for ourselves. It's the only way we can heal. Honestly, I don't think there's any other way around it, right? Someone can't do it for us. And so when we take that responsibility, but I just want to just touch on quickly is the importance
Mhm.
of other people. But instead of it being like he or she or whoever completes me, like the movies, it's more about like I'm complete and together maybe that's the cherry on top of the sundae, right? Like we have this energetic connection and we're beautiful together, but individually we are strong and powerful. And then when we come together with our beliefs or however we want to move forward in life, that's just again the cherry on top. Because I think so many times like we tend to, I think societally, swing the pendulum so far sometimes. And it is our responsibility, but I also think there's so much, and could be another episode, is about community, right? Like you're doing that right now,
Totally.
right? With your
Yes,
mom community.
yes,
Like there's
yes.
so much power and healing in community. And maybe we'll come back and talk about that because I don't want to keep you too long today, but there's so much power in community, and maybe I'll do great idea for another episode because let's talk about that. Or even
Mhm,
maybe
mhm.
coming back with you, Kristen, doing a second episode on continuing
Yes,
on
yeah.
community and how that has impacted you. Actually, I just thought of that and maybe we'll do that. Come back and finish this with about community and how important that has been in your journey as a coach, as
Mm,
getting out with other moms and the
mm,
connection around that, because that's also important. And I do think the pendulum has swung a little bit sometimes about I can do it myself. I'm powerful. I'm a warrior. And I do want to feel that way. I
mhm,
had a healing session this morning and I saw myself as this warrior with an
mm,
arrow because she needed to protect my younger self, right? So I want to
mm,
feel that power, but I also want to know that I'm safe in community and there are people because, right, when we way back when there were tribes, there were communities of people that took care of each other, elders. And so we touched on
mhm,
that in my other podcast, but yeah, honestly, if you're willing, I would love to have you back and actually kind of finish on that because you're doing that.
mhm,
You're doing that in
mhm.
community, and maybe we can talk a little bit in like a part two of the podcast about how community has really impacted your practice as a coach and what you're
Abs
doing with that. Because that's part of the
Yes.
connection piece.
Yes, yes, and exactly. I know we talked a lot about, like, self and
Mhm.
connecting to self, and that's important so that we can then connect with community.
Yes.
But, of
Yes.
course, I mean, what we're all here for, and it's not just with people, it's with the earth, with everything that, like, we are all connected. I had gone to this was a few months ago, a sound bath, and I journeyed, and it was the first time I was on different areas and I was like I was an eagle and I was flying, but then all of a sudden I was everywhere and I could feel myself everywhere. I was in the dirt. I was a plant. But like I could feel pieces of myself, but that's really how it is. That's how we are.
Right.
And so it's the self, but it's then like I'm connected to the trees outside my window. I'm
Right.
connected to you. Like it's all of us. It's this like interwebbing, like
Mhm.
webbing of things. And that's
Interconnectedness.
how, yes,
So
yes.
so
And
let's save that because
mhm,
um I think I'm gonna just have you just give me like three things you think as far as our connection to self. What was helpful to you for our listeners out there today? Like
mhm,
they're a woman or a man, whoever. What are three things that you would suggest that maybe, or two things that you would suggest that is really helpful to start to make that connection to self? And if you're down, I would love to bring you back and do part two of this and talk about how you've transitioned with your connectedness to yourself to your
mhm,
community and the amazing things you're doing in your mom's community, because I think that's worth talking about. And we're almost at time.
mhm, mhm. Okay, ooh, that's tough. So I think I would have to like I have two different kind of answers. So connecting to myself for listeners, what I would have done and what I did do kind of in my earlier 20s was surrounding myself with like-minded people, maybe whether it was a 12-step group or something like that, where people who were already connected to themselves and seeing how they did it, that was really important in my journey
I
at
like
that
that.
time. So that's one piece. And I think now for me, it's much more experiential. So like before, it's like meetings and reading and podcasts and all that stuff I still do now, not the meetings. But for me, it's experiencing the connectedness, whether it's through like energy work, so Reiki, cacao. So it's kind of these energy things that allow me to really get to my heart,
Mm,
to get to the essence of who I am. Because when I'm there, that is when I'm most connected.
mm.
And so I guess what I would say is be open to trying new things, um, and just doing something different. Because if you're not feeling connected, then doing whatever you've been doing is not going to work. Just being open and willing already opens that door to connectedness.
I love that. Thank you. I agree. For me, it's been meditation. It's been being open to new
Mhm,
things, to energy
mhm,
work, to breath work. Each time I
mhm,
include something new, I open, I think, another layer of how much deeper that I can connect to myself. But everybody is not a meditator. So like we'll talk about
mhm,
that in another time. But there is
mhm,
so many ways. It doesn't have to be just one way. So I love that you said that, because I don't even think I would have thought about the first thing you said about embracing yourself with if someone asked me, I wouldn't have thought to say, okay, embracing myself with like-minded people. But that is a big piece of it, because it makes it easier to start to
mhm,
make your transition and be okay with
mhm,
it, because everybody's
mhm,
on that same journey. So I love it.
mhm.
um Tell our listeners, thank you so much. You gave me so much time today, but I feel
Thank
like we could go on
you.
forever.
This is so
um
fun.
I know, I love it. And just tell the listeners a little bit about what you have to offer, your offerings, what you do, and yeah, and where they can find you. And we'll also include all your socials and the ways at the bottom when we launch the podcast. So it'll be all there, but feel free to just
Mhm.
share whatever you want to share.
Yeah. So I offer a 6 month or a 12-month container. And I typically work with women who are going through life transitions, which is pretty much everyone, because who isn't? And so people who are willing to dive in and maybe it's their changing careers, maybe it's a relationship, anything, but they have that feeling that there's more and something needs to be different and they want it, but they just need that little bit of help kind of navigating. And so that is really my zone of genius, because I was there, like not
Yeah.
being happy with life and things like that. And really like, and an outsider might look at my life and say, oh, but like you're home and like you're working or you're with like you're doing like what's so glamorous about your life. And that's not what like it's to me, this is beautiful and I love my life. And so that's a lot of the work that I do with women is creating a life that they love, that they're not living for others and pleasing other people. It's pleasing themselves. And then also working with moms. So I do some in-person offerings at an incredible magical place called Salt House in Hopewell, New Jersey, where I do mom circles, and so it's kind of a monthly support. We do different themes, and it's that community piece. And I think it's especially needed for moms. So doing that, and then there's tons of other different offerings. I'm going to be facilitating a new moon circle there in February. So just lots of fun, different things.
All
That are
juicy stuff.
for me.
I
Yes,
love
yes.
it. I love it.
Mhm.
So I think that if Krista's down, we're going to bring her back. And I really want to talk about how she transitioned into this in-person community, because I feel like we missed a piece at the end here.
Mhm.
And so we'll bring that back for all of you, because that's a key piece. She's doing amazing work. She is the epitome, honestly, when I met you, around connection and authenticity. And I'm so honored that you came on to talk to me today, and we're going to talk again soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sally, for having
Everybody
me.
check out Krista's stuff, her socials, get a hold of her, and you'll be hearing more from her, because we're going to do a part 2 to this. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.